welcome to the Three Spurs Boys. Today we're doing something we're doing something really different today. Usually we do pregame or postgame match reviews, but today we're
going to football school.
Basically, we brought in a professional known as Statsman Jack from Flatcap Euro Talk. I'm sorry, that's a lot of words for me, yeah? Flatcap Euro Talk. Go subscribe. Phenomenal. Very knowledgeable, and he's going to be teaching us what these tactics are. Welcome, Jack from Flatcap Euro Talk.
Wow, guys, I love your intros.
Hello.
Hey, I love your intros. You guys bring the energy right away. I mean, David and I need to take some pointers from you guys. Maybe even get Krisha's, kind of intros in the beginning. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so let's get right into the tactics, because let's be honest, we don't really understand half of them. But before we get into that, I'm rushing a little bit too much. How are you?
Doing well, doing very well. I mean, to be honest, I was pretty nervous today. Able to get, a very comfortable result with that 3-0. Probably should be a bit more excited than I really am. Just kind of had, a bit of a busy weekend. Kind of probably just a bit tired. Probably after this, maybe enjoy a bit of FIFA. After talking all this tactics, will get me hungry for a bit of FIFA. Then might even, hit the hay quite early tonight. Maybe reward myself with, a bit of a slice of Antonio Conte style pizza. But yeah, things are going good. How are you guys feeling?
That's good. We're doing great after our win against Leicester. Amazing.
Love it.
All right, so let's just get straight into it now.
Let's do it.
The first tactic we want to learn about is tiki-taka.
Tiki-taka is probably one that I probably wouldn't be able to explain as in depth without maybe a bit of extra research. But I would say the one thing that people don't know is I do believe tiki-taka, and I could be wrong, but I think it actually came before Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola, of course, was made very famous during his days at Barcelona. I think it was around the 2011-2013 sort of era where he basically made what some people call one of the best teams of all time that had, Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, probably all the ones that, people like me might be talking about when I have kids, one day, that sort of team, because it was seen as one of the best teams of all time. Kind of the tiki-taka, I guess how you would describe it, is a lot of really short kind of passing for the sake of possession, but keeping possession without needing to take a lot of touches. You know how sometimes when we watch Eric Dyer, Dave and I, we criticize him for, taking 8 touches, 9 touches on the ball. I think what you could say with tiki-taka is that it's very efficient in the way that they keep possession, right? You see them do 3, 4, 5, one touch sort of kind of passing where, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they can kind of get out of, maybe little spells of pressure, or they can even just break down a whole sort of defense that way. And it also just allows, them to be able to, kind of move the ball a bit quicker, without maybe needing to dribble by a bunch of guys. Sometimes, teams really rely on.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I could be wrong about, maybe you guys fact check Jack on, is I think it actually came before Guardiola. I think we associate it a lot with, Pep Guardiola's sort of Barcelona team, but it might have came before that as well. So that's
Okay.
what I would say.
Oh, well, I just acquired a lot of knowledge. Basically, the complete opposite of Eric Dyer.
I would say, what's a good example of it maybe today? To be honest, actually, Xavi's team is more or less kind of doing a version of it right now. You could say Pep Guardiola's team nowadays sort of does it, but it's not really in the same sort of style, I would say, because what made that team so special was, I think, really teams weren't exactly used to that sort of type of style of possession while also having that many good players on the pitch at the same time. And I think teams have sort of adapted to it since then. We'll get into this maybe a bit later, but I think those German teams, especially Bayern Munich, actually sort of, I wouldn't say put a stop to tiki-taka, but they kind of, really stunned, that sort of system at one stage. Yeah. But I when it was at its prime was during that 2013 sort of Pep Guardiola days, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
2012,
Well,
2011. I forget which era it was. I was a bit young at the time, but yeah, that sort of era.
wait, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I am 24, recently 24.
Oh.
So I was born in 97.
Oh. All right. Well, I guess let's move on to the next one.
Wait, I just have a fact to tell you right now. It turns out tiki-taka actually means touch.
Tiki taka.
Yeah. Yeah, one touch passing, that could kind of make sense, right?
Yes, I love learning about the tiki taka. All right, let's get on to the next one. Can you please explain what the low block is to us?
Yes, I actually probably would give you guys a more maybe interesting answer with this one. With the low block, you could say like the best maybe version of it, like these days you could find like over in Portugal with kind of those sort of managers because they play super, super defensive. A low block is usually associated with, a team that's sitting really deep. And what we mean by deep is kind of like, where almost all the defenders are inside their own box, and maybe the rest of the midfielders are just a bit outside, the penalty area, or maybe even just on top of the penalty area. And that would kind of be what a low block is. A low block is usually, most often, it's like a 4-4-2, if you guys know what that would be.
Yeah.
So it would be,
Yeah.
a back four, kind of two sets of center mids, and then kind of two wingers. But those wingers would kind of tuck in a little bit. And the reason why it's kind of a low block is because sort of resembles, kind of a rectangular, very kind of tight sort of shape. What makes it really effective is that it's basically it can kind of contract and expand, in kind of the best sort of ways. And maybe a good example of it recently, even if you guys were watching the Euros, this summer, that Hungary team did an excellent low block where they did a 4-4-2 and they had basically two very hardworking strikers, and those strikers would kind of just press teams into a certain area of the pitch where it just made it really difficult for them to kind of break them down, and it made it really difficult for that. It just when you have a really hardworking team, you can kind of get away with that low block if you're not a very good team, is what I would say. So if you're ever coming up against a team that you guys feel like you have no shot against, I would definitely recommend a sort of low block, because if you guys are all buying into it, it definitely can be very effective. Basically, again, I would say two backs of four. That's maybe another way people talk about it. Two backs of four. A back four, left back, center back, right back, and then the center mids and the right mid and the left mid, and then probably some combination of a striker or kind of a midfielder up top, and then it just kind of contracts and forms a very, very deep kind of sitting kind of shape, and it's very effective. I would say Burnley, always a good example with Sean Dyche. That Hungary team was a great example. Some teams in Portugal are always good examples. Even that Villarreal team, at one stage, sometimes that's a very low block team as well. There are a lot of examples of it. I mean, they're pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Will low block work against Tottenham?
The reason why it's working against Tottenham right now is because it does work against Tottenham, to answer the question. The reason why it's working against
why? Now
why? Because I don't think we have any, good players in those wide areas, right? We're so frustrated with Emerson. We're so frustrated with Reguilon at times. We're frustrated with Sessegnon, as well. Ever since Matt Doherty's become good, we kind of showed that maybe we can have some, kind of development out there. But I think the reason why the low block is so effective is because the low block forces teams to kind of have the ball out wide instead of in the center of the pitch.
Yeah.
And when you're forcing teams to play out wide, that means those wide players are going to have a lot more to do, and they're going to have to be the creative ones. And when you have someone like Emerson, making the majority of the plays in those wide areas, and he's not very talented in those sort of, parts of the pitch, then you're just going to, be taken advantage of. And I think that's what it's kind of become, is teams are sort of realizing that, okay, we have to sacrifice a lot of space in the wide areas to those players and just maybe accept that there could be a threat out there. But I think they would rather take the chance that Emerson would do something to them than Harry Kane or, Son or players in the middle. So I think that's why it's effective.
Okay. Now let's go to the next one. Overlap.
Just overlap, not.
What is overlap actually?
An overlap is just like, when you see one player have the ball and you see one guy run to the outside of him, to help out. That's what kind of an overlap would be. So a good example would be in our team. I don't know, like sometimes you'll see someone like Sonny, right, pick up the ball and you'll see like Regulon just absolutely flying, on the outside of him, on the pitch. So like more towards the sideline or more towards the touchline. That would be like an overlap, is when a player is basically running to the outside of another one, running it behind. Yeah.
Just as curiosity, how do you think defenders could defend against that? How do you think teams could defend against another team using overlap on a counterattack?
In a counterattack, very, very tough, especially the way that we play, right? Because we have so many quick players, and when you maybe don't have so many players back, let's say you get caught out, you only have 3 or 4 players, maybe, back, and maybe Spurs are attacking with 4 players as well. It's really tough, because let's say Sonny picks up the ball on the left-hand side and there's just a center back and, an extra defender. If somebody's just, absolutely full pace, flying, past Sonny's going to either play that pass, to which somebody's going to have to honor, which could mean one of those defenders is going to have to run over and honor that pass, or somebody who is running with Regulon is going to have to continue running with him, which means Sonny can try to play that pass, or Sonny could try to take it past that guy, and then it becomes like a 3-on, 4, sort of situations, or a 4-on-3 is what I mean. And how do you defend against it? It's kind of tough. I think the reason people do, kind of overlaps is just because it allows you to kind of keep that threat out wide when you do have someone cut through the middle. So maybe the way you defend against it is just have maybe that full back, or, that right back or left back, stay wide, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Because what tactic would you use against perhaps somebody who's using the overlap? Yeah, somebody who's like teams on the counterattack overlapping. What tactic would you use to defend? Perhaps you're coaching a team.
I guess in that case, if I knew that there was like those overlapping fullbacks, kind of like sort of we have, or you could say Liverpool are a good team, good example of that as well. Overlapping fullbacks. What you probably need is, to be fair, I would actually do, if you guys remember watching what Jose did to Man City last season, that game where I think we won 2-1. Or 2-0 or whatever it might have been at the end of the day. What he used was that he had a back 4, a 4-2-3-1. He had a back 4, but what really helped was he had the winger kind of drop back and, track those runs. So that was Sonny or that was Bergwijn, tracking those runs, those overlapping runs. But they also had Højbjerg and Sissoko. Anytime those players were also out wide, they would also help out. So you had the benefit of, in case maybe Sonny or Bergwijn didn't help out, you had also the benefit of Sissoko and Højbjerg, who were very defensive, hardworking players, to also like make sure that, those runs always are kind of tracked. You can't do anything about those runs happening, but maybe what you always want to have is that extra player to be able to, mark that run in case it is happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, would you use a low block against a team using an overlap?
Absolutely, because the overlap then becomes sort of not as effective when you really think about it, because if the team is sitting so deep, they're going to run out of bounds, So there's not really very much space to really be overlapping or running past players into. So a low block is actually, to be honest, what that really long answer I just gave earlier, that was a much smarter suggestion than I just gave. So well done, Jay. Well done. Yeah,
because it was crazy. I don't know if you remember the Watford game where we won in like the last minute of the game. Sanchez with the last minute header from they're defending us like crazy. They had like
they had like 6 players back there.
Came back to the Premier League and decided, hey, let's help out Watford.
Ranieri, actually, another great example of someone who Claudio Ranieri is that guy who managed Leicester City that won that title. So he's been very effective, before and kind of using those sort of very defensive sort of shapes. I know that's a great example. I mean, I felt like there were 7 to 8 players, inside their own penalty area for Watford. It just felt like there was no space whatsoever. That's a great example.
Okay. On to the next one then. What is closing down? There we go.
Ooh, closing down. That's pretty easy. I mean, very similar in basketball probably. And in fact, I've probably been talking about football for so long that I'm even forgetting like how you would describe what the terminology is for it in basketball. But closing down is basically just any person that has the ball that is in some sort of area of threat, or even just, just has the ball and has, the opportunity to take a few touches. That's when people just ask for a certain player to close down, that guy, to make life difficult for him, to either win the ball off of him or to make, him, pass the ball off, or her pass the ball off to a teammate. So it's really just, when you're asking like a defender to come up, similar like in basketball, right? When you're asking somebody to step up, to an opponent, before maybe they shoot a 3 or maybe whatever it may be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now I know this one. I hope you know this one, the offside trap. So I'm not going to ask you what the offside trap is, because basically during set pieces, defenders would basically run away and leave the attackers offside, or the defenders would be more higher up so that they can't get the long balls in, right? Yeah. Instead, I'm going to ask you, how do you think a team could utilize an offside trap?
A team could, yeah. Sorry,
Christian. You could continue. Sorry, I was just gonna ask what utilize means.
Utilize, true. It's like a fancy way of saying use. It's a fancy way of saying use.
Yeah.
Like using a very fancy way of saying it. And now I would say it's the exact same way of saying use. But the more you know, right? The more you know. But you were saying with offside traps, when would you use it? You would use it. You brought up set pieces. Great time to use it, because if you were coming up against a team that was really good in the air and you don't really stand a chance maybe every time against some of those players, I would say like a West Ham, they're ridiculous in the air. You then would want to do an offside trap, from set pieces, where maybe you set a really high line. And what that high line, the threat of that is that if they time the pass well, there's a lot of space for them to go and score. But usually, most cases, if you keep the line pretty disciplined, most players end up being offsides, and the referee just calls it anyway. And so they could be used in that situation. Another good example would be just to use it against like, what's a really good example? Oh yeah, Bayern Munich used it all the time against PSG. All the time. Any situation that they found that Mbappe was going to be running in behind, because Bayern Munich, right, their defense is not great, but what they did do very well at was just making players offsides in any situation that it got scary for them, where they knew that they were toast. They just would step up as the pass is being played, right? And they would take that risk, where if they timed it, they would just be absolutely toast, even more toast. But they would usually just step up the moment that they knew that pass was going to be played to Mbappe. Mbappe is one of the least disciplined, I think, like runners in the world. I think he's extraordinarily easy to use an offside trap against. And in fact, that would be the best player or team I would use that against. Is any team Mbappe is on, I would use an offside trap against. Because if you want to, or you use a low block, right? Like you said, that would also be effective. But if you wanted to keep like a high line and, like really insert your influence on the game, you really wanted to like dominate a team, and, be effective yourself, that could be the risk that Mbappe has a lot of green grass, ahead of him to run in behind. But if you used an offside trap, that could be very useful for sure.
Yeah. Would you say Tottenham would work well with using the offside trap?
Not like us, because I feel like our team doesn't have that high of a line. Like our defenders sit a lot deeper, so it's probably not very necessary. if we started pressing a lot higher, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we already said this, but thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thank you.
we said it like multiple times. I haven't messed up on it. But how about you let the people know where we could find you, where they could find you?
Wow, very, very nice. You can find me over alongside David at the Irish Hotspur, and they can find me at my sort of second channel, which is the Flatcap Euro Talk, which is basically where I just talk about stuff outside of Spurs.
Yeah.
If you maybe want to, take your mind off of Spurs and, talk about things that are going on, in Europe with other teams, and also just talk about players that maybe we think that we should probably get in the summer, like players that Paratici should take a look at. So that sort of stuff.
Well, anyways, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thank
remember,
you.
guys, this is only part 1. We still have so much more, so many more tactics. So many more tactics to discuss.
How many did we get through? Did I drag on too many? How many did we get through? I felt like we got through.
Five.
We got through 5. Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. Love it.
All right.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining
Bye.
us.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay.
You hit the wrong button like 3 times. Alright, guys, thank you for joining us today. I remember, today is to do.
So go for it.
Come on, you Spurs!
We sang in France, we sang in Spain, we sing in the sun and we sing in the rain. They tried to stop us, but look at they did. The thing we love most is being a kid, being a kid, being a kid. The thing we love most is being a kid.
Come on, you Spurs!
Make sure to like and subscribe.